Hello everyone, Revan619 here. How the devil are you? I hope you're all enjoying the DLC 2 for Rogue Trader, and now that the developers have released their roadmap for 1.5, which seems to be addressing every single complaint that I've had to this point, I wanted to look at what we currently have for the existing Homeworlds and Origins, because these are some things that might be getting reviewed. We don't know too much if the Homeworlds are going to get changed, but we know that they're going to be looking to review the Origins to bring them more in line with the DLC and the Psyker classes. They're also going to be looking to do a balance pass on the archetypes, but they said they weren't going to be over-nerfing things. They also mentioned that they will be looking at Astartes gear and Xenos gear, so hopefully some Ulfa Mirazhi, or Marashi, as some like to call him, and yeah, buffs there. So looking at each of these worlds, so Death World comes with Survival Instinct. For those who don't know, once per combat, when the wounds of the Death World character drop below 30%, they gain 20% of their maximum wounds as temporary wounds. Death World characters also gain 20% bonus dodge and armor, whilst they have at least 1 point of temporary wounds. So Death World, very strong for warriors, very strong for blade dancers. It's very useful for melee characters that are going to be relying on dodge and armor. So especially light armor builds, it can make you really, really tanky, which can also be built up by Arc Militant as well as by Executioner. Now, some of the features that come with this are actually quite useful as well, whereas some of them less so. So Brutal Hunter here, the Death World character gains 15% critical hit chance against targets with bleeding effect or with 50% or less of their maximum wounds. So obviously this is going to be very strong on anything here to get more crit chance, but especially for executioners. Trusty weapons, Death World characters gain 10% critical hit chance with axes, hammers, and las weapons. Now, I very much like to use axes and hammers. They're two of the most meta weapons, so this again is going to be very good for, say, a warrior arc militant. Wounded Beast, this is what creates the meta build for Blade Dancer, which is every injury increases the Death World character's agility and willpower by 5. Each trauma counts as 3. Stack that facing the end and balancing on the edge, and you go into execution, so you don't need toughness. You have a very overpowered injury build. It's actually what I use to solo the game on Unfair. Lifetime Scars is Death World characters suffer tough bonus, less damage from fire, toxic damage, and bleeding effects. This isn't what I invest in. It's pretty much a waste of a talent point, and if you're going into Pyromancy, you're going to use Body of Flames instead, which also halves the damage of last fire damage, so you're not really going to be caring about that. Tenacity is one that I really like, but not many people often use, and it's also actually been outshined a little bit by the Arbitrator origin. So once per combat, when a Death World character suffers stunned, blinded, or immobilized effect, this effect is ignored, and they are instead gain 20% of their maximum wounds as temporary wounds. So it's only a once per combat, but it can be useful if some enemies are spamming stun grenades, but multiple uses are still going to get through it, so it doesn't really help with those enemies that like to fire 3 or 4 of them. But yes, as far as tiering them go, Death World is definitely up there in the upper echelons. I would say it's probably the best, if not second best one that you can go for. So, Voidborn is a little interesting one. This is probably Reddit's favourite one, but one that it's a bit underwhelming. It sounds good on paper, but in effect it isn't as good as it could be. So, the base ability of this is Fortune. A Voidborn character can reroll any failed attack, dodge, parry, or skill test with a 20% chance of success. This chance cannot be greater than base chance of the roll. Additionally, any enemy dodge or parry against the Voidborn character has 20% chance to fail after a successful roll. So, that is actually pretty useful. But if we look at the abilities, so Bloody Mess, anytime Voidborn character scores a critical hit, there's a 10% chance to double the damage. This can go in with some other effects here. So we got Contagious Luck. Using a non-damaging ability on an ally grants that ally the ability to re-roll any failed attack, dodge, parry characteristic or skill test with a 20% chance of success in 1 round. So this is something you'll see on the characters that like to use Voidborn officers. Yes, so this chance cannot be greater than base success chance of the roll. Using non-damage ability on an enemy grants them a 20% chance to fail a successful dodge or parry test against character, so this is something you'll see on the operative side of things. Then you have Jinx coming in here. Whilst the Voidborn character has more than 50% wounds, all chances of all creatures, including enemies in a 3-cell radius, are increased by 10%. So this is something that also applies to Skirmisher boots, so it's quite useful on Kibella. While Voidborn characters have less than 50% wounds, all chances of all creatures, including enemies in a 3-cell radius, are decreased by 10%. Just Flesh Boot Wound. Voidborn character has 20% chance to survive after suffering lethal damage, surviving with 1 wound. Never use this, but I understand on paper that does seem useful. But Be Smart is what everyone goes for. So Regardless of what it says, it replaces all fellowship with intelligence. Now, items that boost fellowship won't boost your intelligence, but anything that uses intelligence for a roll or a score will instead actually use intelligence. So the way it's written is anytime an ability or talent uses the fellowship bonus, a Void 1 character can instead use intelligence bonus if it's higher. Additionally, Void 1 characters can always upgrade intelligence even if their archetype does not allow it. This will even change your resolve to stack from intelligence. So naturally, many people like to do be smart and go officer. It's just you can't stack intelligence as high as you can fellowship, so like stuff like Leader's Assault won't actually apply here. Look, this one, mid-tier. I wouldn't say it's bad, but it's not the best. So Hive World, this is one that for roleplay purposes people want to use, but its effects in actual practice is not very good. So strength numbers, Hive World characters gain 1 plus fellowship bonus divided by 2 resolve if there are 3 or more creatures, allies or enemies in a 3-cell radius. Yet they suffer -2 penalties resolve with no creatures around. So this means that this does apply to allies or enemies, so you kind of want to be in the thick of things. Then they get Camaraderie. Hive-World characters can pass willpower resistant tests using fellowship value instead if the character fellowship is higher. So if you are doing a Hive-World officer, you're probably going to want to make them quite a tanky frontline one. You can use the old Law Imperium trick with Charter's Pendant to stack with, saying, Cognitious Scriptures and Breacher's Armor to have really high armor. Outnumber, if a Hive-World character has melee superiority against enemies, that means multiple people around them, the effect is increased by 10. If an enemy has melee superiority against a Hive-World character, that effect is decreased by 10. Weapon personalization, all ranged weapons dealing physical damage have +1 damage, so this is stuff like your solid projectiles and bolt ones, 5% arm penetration and 1 rate of fire, and -5 to recoil. Helping Hand, if a Hive-World character starts their turn adjacent to an ally character, that Hive-World character gains +2 MP. If a Hive-World character ends their turn adjacent to allies, they all gain +2 MP on their next turn. Not the best, but it's still usable. Fresh Start, Hive-World characters gain 50% bonus to dodge against the first attack of opportunity every round. Not sure why you'd be using that too much, but Hive-World's definitely on the bottom end of if you were to look at things. Next up is Forge World. This one is quite interesting. So you have Forged for a purpose. So you pick one of these 3, and Pascal's currently bugged and doesn't have any of that as the only Forge World companion, which is a bit annoying. Forge World characters choose one augmentation system from the following list. Subskin Armor grants 5 plus 2 times tough bonus % armor. Locomotive System grants agility bonus divided by 2 MP and 2 times agility bonus % dodge. Analytic Systems grants 10 plus int bonus % critical hit chance. So as you can see, you're probably going to go Warrior Subskin Armor, Locomotion Systems on, say, your blade dancers or even your soldiers, and then analytic systems, which is going to be something you're going to pick for your operatives. So it's there on paper. Next up is Pinnacle of Weaponry. The first attack in combat with any plasma, melter or power weapon deals additional damage equal to int bonus. So this is something that does work with, say, power swords and stuff, but the problem is you need to be leveling int. So you can see how this was designed for Pascal, but for some reason they didn't include arc rifles in there. Fires of the Forge. The Forge World character gains toughness bonus deflection against burning effects and flame weapons. This one's a bit of an odd one, but I understand how it's thematically there. Steel of the Forge. This also applies to power armors, regardless of what it says. Whilst wearing heavy armor, Forge World characters gain 1 MP, 1 deflection, and cannot fall prone. This is very good. Any Warrior Forge World with the subskin armor I pick, I normally try to get this in if I'm going heavy armor. Persistence for the Forge. Forge World characters gain a stacking 10% bonus to hit chance and dodge reduction against any target they hit with a single target attack. Successful critical hits from a single target attack increases the hit chance and dodge reduction by 20%. So that's something that can even work on an assassin there, because that does work with some of your abilities. The last one's Calculated Relations. This is the weaker version of Be Smart. So Forge World characters can use Persuasion, Coercion or Commerce-based intelligence instead of Fellowship. So if I was to rate this one, again, higher. It's definitely very useful. As far as the defensive purposes go, it's a very solid choice, and it's something that can be used on many builds. So whilst it's not always as powerful as Deathworld, it's definitely a lot more usable than Deathworld in some scenarios. So it's one of my favourite ones. Imperial World. So this one is what nearly the entire cast comes from, and they start with Humanity's Finest. Imperial World characters can select any characteristic except weapon skill or ballistic skill and get a +10 bonus. So not too bad. Ready to serve. When an Imperial World character is affected by an ally's non-damaging ability or affects an ally with such an ability, their resolve is increased by fellowship bonus divided by 2 for 1 round. So that's not too bad to get that going. Bear to Die for the Emperor. Whilst under 40% wounds, Imperial characters gain plus 10 bonus to all characteristics and plus 2 resolve. So if you look like you're going to be getting beaten up a bit, that's actually a really good one to take. Though I tend not to work into my builds, so I've never needed to. But as balancing changes, and maybe if we do get this brutal mode, I might start using that more, especially for, say, Abelard. Doing my part, if no character in the current party has the same archetype as the character, the first archetype ability used in each combat by this character costs 1 AP less. Not bad if you're not overlapping builds here. No Heresy is one of the ones I like to go for, which is Imperial World characters gain plus 10% critical hit chance and 10% armor against Xenos or demonic creatures. Their allies gain half the bonuses of No Heresy. However, Imperial World characters Lord Xenos and Lord Warp are always 0. So yeah, this does seem to work for all allies, because originally it said something like it couldn't work for the Xenos allies, but it does. Last one is Stronger Together. So this one is what I was just explaining. So all allies excluding Xenos, even though it does apply to Xenos, in the current party gain plus 5 to the same characteristic that was chosen for Humanity's Finest. So this means, say, someone like Argenta, who has Humanity's Finest Agility, this will give a nice plus 2 to all your allies, which is 5% more dodge, and it will help with the initiative ordering. So this one, very solid, middle of the road, and it's one of those ones, if you're not sure what to do, just go with this one. Now, Fortress World, this is the premier shooting one that can also be used by Blade Dancers, because even though everything seems to imply shooting, it does also apply to melee. Each time a Fortress World character kills an enemy, they gain 10 stacks of Never Stop Shooting. At the start of their turn, there is a stacks of Never Stop Shooting % chance that the first attack in this round will cost 0 AP and will not count towards the attack limit per turn. If this effect triggers, all stacks are lost. This applies to extra turns as well. So if you do an extra turn, kill a bunch of stuff, then you come around to your main turn, there's a chance that you will then have a free attack, and it will be the same with, say, Finest Hour. So some of the abilities that you get in here: Combat Addict. Fortress World characters gain plus 7 ballistic skill, perception, and willpower whilst in combat, yet whilst out of combat, intelligence, fellowship, perception, and willpower are decreased by -7. I don't know why the second part of them isn't highlighted on some of those. But anyway, Hail of Steel. Each round, Fortress World characters gain a stack and 1% bonus to dodge against ranged attacks for each shot they made during this round. Also, the ranged burst attack grants an additional 10 stacks of Never Stop Shooting, so this is very good for your burst fire builds. Familiar Kitback. At the end of their turn, Fortress World characters gain stacks Never Stop Shooting equal to half the minimal damage of the most damaging ranged weapon they used this round, so pretty good for building up some of your turns there. Spare Magazine. This is going to be very useful for operatives that go for Never Stop Shooting. Fortress World characters first reload in combat cost 0 AP. Reloading a weapon grants an additional 10 stacks of Never Stop Shooting. It can also stack for Soldier. And the last one, Never Stop Believing. When all stacks of Never Stop Shooting should be lost, they become willpower divided by 3 stacks instead. Additionally, a Fortress World character may upgrade their willpower critic even if their current archetype does not allow it. So this can be quite useful for getting those stacks going. This one, definitely another top tier. I would say the top tiers for, well, basically for Homeworlds are going to be your Fortress World, your Forge World, and your Death World. Your middle of the road is going to be Voidborn Imperial World, and the clear bottom is definitely Hive World. When it comes to Origins, Astra Military Commander is one of those ones that a lot of people say aren't very good, but it's actually a lot more powerful than people give it credit for. The only problem with the non-DLC archetypes is, besides Crime Lord, they are all once per combat, so that is already a bit of a negative stain on them. So Astra Military Commander starts with Regimental Tactics. So the Astra Military Commander and all their allies deal an additional 20 plus 2 times perception bonus damage to enemies that are adjacent to the commander or their allies until the end of the commander's next turn. So this damage boost, you can be in melee range or an ally can be in melee range, and it will apply damage. All of the commander's allies also suffer no damage from allies' attacks until the end of the commander's next turn. Now that you have pets, you can just sort of run a pet in next to enemies and they all take additional damage, and you can't damage your own pet. So it's very useful just for if you have any melee companions, or even if you get the Astra Military Commander up there with the Ruby Necklace, or even just using close quarters training. This is going to do quite a lot. But the reason why this is one of the best ones is actually because one of the features we have in here. That feature is Field of Fire. Whilst the Astra Military Commander is under Regimental Tactics, all of their allies gain 5% to their rate of fire for every attack they have made since the start of this effect. This means that your rate of fire on, say, Alpha, Argenta, and even the Astra Militum Commander can be absolutely obscene. If you've seen my Lord Commander Militant build, I did a little showcase of that on Discord, and I've teased at doing a full video on it. Yeah, your rate of fire can max out the improved Heavy Bolter at 16 round 1. It is obscene, and with the new heavy stubber that can also gain rate of fire from DLC 2, this is incredibly powerful. You get suppression fire whilst the Astra Militum Commander is under the effects of regimental tactics. Their single target melee ranged attacks and area attacks gain 20% dodge reduction and parry reduction and cover penetration. So this one is a little bit better for shotguns. It's not as good because it doesn't apply to burst. But yes, and cover penetration against enemies adjacent to the commander or their allies. So it is useful if you're using shotguns as a secondary. So if you're making a Arc Militant build, going shotguns and say heavy stubber or heavy bolters, this is pretty useful for there. Timely rescue. Whilst the Astra Militum Commander is under the regimental tax effect, killing an enemy adjacent to an ally grants that ally an additional 10 momentum. That does include yourself, by the way. Allies include yourself. Unflinching heroism. Each time the Astra Militum Commander's ally uses a heroic act, the commander gains +5 to all their characteristics until the end of combat. So this, again, is another good one. Shoulder to shoulder. Whilst the Astra Militum Commander is adjacent to an ally, the commander deals an additional 10 plus perception bonus damage to all enemies adjacent to the commander's allies. Yes, if you're standing next to an ally, any ally, you do more damage. This does also include pets. It's good. It's very usable. A lot of people seem to think that it's not usable, but I actually find this to be a very, very good archetype. Well, Origin, and as far as Origins go, I would say this is right up there. It's not quite S-Class, because in the S-Class we're going to have stuff like Psyche and other things we're going to talk about, but it's definitely A-Tier. It's only a few buffs away from being S-Tier, so depending on what the devs do, this could actually be a really good one. So, Commissar, this one, if I quickly just move my webcam, has the best strip in the goddamn game. If we go back and we look back at the Astra Militum Commander, he's not too bad either, and obviously you can customize these colors a little bit, but it does look damn good. But so does the Commissar. Look how good this guy looks. But yes, so let's pop me back in here. I might actually just lower my webcam a little bit to here just so you can have a look at this glory as I go through the rest of this. But the Commissar's ability is a bit naff, so it's at all costs. The Commissar's next single shot or single target melee attack applies the following effect. An enemy target, the target becomes marked. The ally who kills the marked target gains an extra turn after the current one with 2 AP and 4 MP. Allied target, all allies gain additional 1 AP and plus 3 MP for 1 round. Again, being 1 round is why it's not the best. However, so the enemy target one, if you overpen with, say, a sniper rifle, will actually apply this effect to multiple enemies, which is pretty good. And if you hit an ally who blocks it, it actually seems to apply it on AoE to the entire party. So that was something very interesting that I found. If we look at the upgrades, Duty and Honor, whilst the Commissar's ally is under the effects of at all cost, the ally suffers 50% damage but gains +2 AP and 4 MP instead of 1 AP and 3 MP. Not a good trade-off for +1s, but if you're one-turning anyway, it doesn't really matter. Show them contempt. Whilst the Commissar is adjacent to an enemy, their allies gain Commissar's Fellowship bonus divided by 2 resolve, so you can see this is meant to be more for a officer. At any time the Commissar grants additional movement points to an ally character, they get +2 movement points more. So this is going to apply to, say, Finest Hour, move. So again, they're really trying to pigeonhole you into officer here. Summary execution. If the Commissar kills a target with at all costs, they can use at all costs once more in the combat for 0 AP. That sniper rifle trick, if you've overpenned, yes, that will be allowing you to do that in multiple places. For the Emperor, well, when momentum is less than 100 points, at all costs grants 20 plus 2 times fellowship bonus momentum upon killing the marked enemy or target an ally. So yeah, it's something that they've clearly built for being a buff support officer character, but I feel like there's a good more they could do. If you've seen the Commissar Unleashed, now that mod is incredibly overpowered, but it has more of an idea of what else you could be doing here. Looking over at Crime Lord, again, some fantastic drip going on here. Look at this man. But anyway, so let's have a look at what it does here. So Surefire Plan. At the start of combat, the Crime Lord gains int bonus stacks of Surefire Plan effect. Activation of this ability consumes 1 stack and makes the next action stronger depending on the type of action. The Crime Lord's attack deal additional 10 plus perception bonus % more damage. So this does seem to imply it's going for Operative or Soldier. If the Crime Lord moves, they gain 10 plus perception bonus % dodge and parry until the start of their next turn. So that could be for ranged or melee. If the Crime Lord uses non-damaging ability on an enemy, that enemy suffers 10 plus int % bonus penalty to damage for 1 round. So that's clearly designed to debuff as an operative type. This can be used multiple times per turn. So this one's a little bit better. If we look at the actual abilities here, so Killing Plan, the damage bonus Surefire Plan is increased by 2 times weapon score bonus % damage. Killing at least 1 enemy with the attack restores 1 stack of Surefire Plan. Now that would be nice if that was weapon score or ballistic score, whichever was higher, but you can buff both. The next upgrade is Escape Plan. The dodge bonus to dodge and parry from Surefire Plan is increased by 2 times agility % bonus. Dodging or parrying at least 1 attack by the start of the next round restores 1 stack of Surefire Plan. So there's ways to get that back. Disorienting Plan. An enemy affected by Surefire Plan also suffers a 10 plus 2 times perception bonus penalty to dodge and parry. So again, really good for the debuffing side of things here. Contingency Plan. At the start of their turn, the Crime Lord has no stack Surefire Plan. They get plus 1 stack. So this keeps your mechanic going. And the last plan. Once per combat, the Crime Lord has at least 1 stack of Surefire Plan. They do not die from lethal damage. Instead, they heal for 5 times Surefire Plan stacks of maximum wounds, lose all stacks, and can no longer gain Surefire Plan stacks. So this is like the ultimate I survived for now. So if we're saying Astronaut's Commander's probably A tier, Commissar's going to be pretty much F or D tier, depending on how you like to do that. Crime Lord is also looking to be another A tier, potentially S tier if it wasn't for the fact that some of these other things exist that we go over in a little bit. So, Minister and Priest, this is one that feels like there's been some huge missed opportunities. Again, the actual look of it's not too bad, I don't hate that. But let's read some of the abilities. So, War Hymn grants momentum equal to 2 times the devotee's willpower bonus. This ability also grants an additional willpower bonus momentum for each enemy that is either within 5-star radius around the devotee or was hit by the devotee this turn. Next up, we see some of the upgrades here. So, Litany of Purification. All enemies in the area of War Hymn or Furious Recital gain 1 stack of Disturbed effect. Enemies that are adjacent to the devotee get 2 stacks of Disturbed effect instead. Also, all daemons in the area suffer damage equal to momentum restored to the devotee whilst using the ability. So, not exactly the best. What Disturbed does, each stack inflicts a -10 penalty to Fellowship and Willpower. It's not really something that you can use with this origin. Next we've got Litany of Hatred. The devotee and their allies in the area effect of War Hymn or Furious Recital gain the devotee's willpower bonus divided by 2 damage for single shots and attacks of opportunity. If that just didn't say single shots, this would actually be really good. That should just apply to all damage. It really should. Next up, Shield of Faith. The devotee gains 4 times willpower bonus percentage to armor against attacks of daemons and warp damage. The devotee's resolve is also permanently increased by willpower bonus divided by 2, which isn't too bad, but that first effect definitely needs some work. This is definitely one of the ones that need a lot of work. The devotee gains willpower bonus % chance to ignore any enemy attack. If you could actually do more of willpower, this would be quite good, because you could be pumping that. Cleansing Faith. Now this one, it doesn't read good on paper, but it's actually good in effect. So melee, flame, and melter attacks against demons and psychers deal an additional 2 times willpower bonus % damage and gain 6 times willpower bonus % armor penetration. Such attacks against Xenos, an additional willpower bonus damage equal gain of 3 times willpower bonus % armor penetration. Now, the actual second part of this against Xenos applies to all weapons. If this is a bug, please do not fix this, devs, because this is the only usable part of Priest. If you fix that, it becomes a dead archetype. Well, not archetype, origin that is. So if we're going to say that Astronaut's Commander is A tier, Commissar is like F, D tier, Crime Lord is another A tier, Priest is also going to be looking to be another D/F because it's just not very usable. Navy Officer. Now this handsome looking chap here is another one where people don't think it's very good, but in effect it's actually very strong, and it is what our boy Abelard has. So Brace for Impact. For 1 round, the Navy officer and their allies in a 3-sail radius gain 2 deflection for each archetype taken by the Navy officer. They also cannot be forcefully moved or over-penetrated, so that's potentially a 6 bonus deflection that you're going to be getting there. So this one is actually very useful, though unfortunately is a once per combat effect. But however, we do have some fairly usable upgrades here. So do not falter. All allies affected by brace of impact do not suffer negative effects of melee superiority for the entire combat, so that's pretty huge. Scatter. All allies affected by brace of impact suffer only half damage from all attacks of opportunity, also very, very good. Perfect timing. All allies affected by brace of impact gain 30% to cover penetration. The Navy officer permanently gains 15% to cover penetration. Not too bad, actually, though you tend not to really use cover that much in this game. But the big upgrade is Get Off Me. So brace of impact also allows the Navy officer to use any ranged weapons in threatened areas, knocks enemies prone and pushes them 1 cell away during the effect. All attacks for this 1 round will knock enemies prone and push them 1 cell away during the effect. So if you use a burst fire ability, very good. This also stacks with the push glove, so you can generate a lot of temp HP on the first one. Gains cover. All allies affected by brace of impact gain an extra turn with 0 AP and 3 MP to increase their cover efficiency by 20% for 1 round. Targets can only use movement abilities or heroic acts or desperate measures during this extra turn. So it's very useful for getting your team moving and going. It's not too bad. It used to refresh some abilities, but they fixed that. But if we're looking at this to say, I would say this is definitely a strong contender for B tier. Noble. So Noble is another interesting one. So again, some fantastic looking drip here, and once as always you can customize the colouring here. So he is one of the better looking, more handsome chaps that you have access to. And he's received a buff that should be allowing his ability to work with the servo skull. You can't see it so much in the character sheet, but you definitely see its effects at taking application in the combat log. So, you serve me. The noble assigns an ally who will become their servant to the end of combat. Anytime the noble's abilities affect the servant gains +5 to all characteristics until the start of the noble's turn. This does not stack, and if it did, it would be much stronger. Anytime the servant attacks a target that the noble has dealt damage to since the last turn, the servant gains 10 plus noble's fellowship bonus critical hit chance against that target. Again, this applies to everyone that you put this through the servo skull swarm. So, the first ability is you do something. So if a noble uses an ability on their servant, the servant gains +1 AP next turn. Does not stack with itself, unfortunately. You protect me. If the noble and their servant are adjacent to each other at the start of the noble's turn, they both gain temporary wounds equal to the servant's toughness bonus or the noble's ship's fellowship bonus, depending on which is higher. So you can see that this is designed for an officer. You go on. The noble's servant gains 2 movement points every turn. Not too bad. You kill it. If the servant kills the target the noble dealt damage to since last turn, the noble gains +1 AP next turn. And you are next. If the servant has less than 30% maximum wounds, the noble can use You Serve Me once more in battle, designate a new servant, and remove the effect from the previous one. The noble cannot designate a character who has already had their servant this combat. This one, not too bad. If we're going to look at Noble, yes, it's designed to be an officer. Yes, officer is one of the most overpowered archetypes, but this is a good middle-of-the-road C-tier style sort of origin. It could use buffs. They all could. Now, we get into the big boys. So, this less interesting one, though still looking cool in his own right, is the Sanctioned Psyker. The Sanctioned Psyker has all sorts of abilities that are going to be related to the schools that you go down. So initially you pick which school you're going to go into, whether it be Divination, Biomancy, Telepathy, Pyromancy, or Santic Powers. There is way too much for me to read and go through this, but I do so in many builds. But I will quickly break down the tasks, and yes, this is truly S tier. It's practically an archetype in itself, and in Dark Heresy, it might actually just be an archetype. So Divination can give you some buffs and some dodge-based things. It's on the weakest side of them. Biomancy is your physical buffs, which is going to be S tier in itself for buffing. Telepathy has some incredibly high damage, and it works very well with the Raven, and some of the things like the mental boost that you can use with this, as well as just the straight up damage that you get, and pain channeling, again, S tier for damage. Pyromancy, yep, you can use it as both ranged or melee, and the staffs are incredibly powerful. Again, it can be used with the Raven, or it can be Blade Dancer Executioner, which is part of the Biomancy combo to make it the S tier injury build. Incredibly powerful in itself. Sanctic powers, they give resolve buffs, which can boost a shit ton of gear and is highly abuseful. And Sanctified Staff is the highest damaging psychic staff that you can get in the game. You get that at the start of Footfall in Act 2. Again, all of this shit is S tier. The only one that I would say is probably like B tier is Divination. But yeah, it's the strongest archetype in the game right now. Well, I say archetype, origin, but it's practically an archetype how much comes to it. And lastly, with the DLC, we have the Arbitrator, which again, fantastic looking attire here. Arbitrator comes in one of 3 flavors. You have the Vigilant, you have the Castigator, and you have the Seductor. The way that Vigilant works is whenever you or the pet does damage, you get coercion bonus damage to shotgun shots, which is incredibly powerful. You get access to the Fulminating Shot ability, so you can reduce the target's dodge, parry, and block of targets in the area of effect by 20 plus coercion for 1 round, regardless of whether or not they were hit. Very, very, very strong. You also get access to new abilities such as Double Slug, which can allow you to make 2 single-shot targets with a shotgun, and Grisly Adjudication. So the shotgun's attack has shotgun arm penetration, additional arm penetration, inflicts shotgun maximum damage levels of bleeding on targets. Castigator is another interesting one. First of all, you get Death Sentence. The Arbitrator inflicts Arbitrator's coercion stacks of Death Sentence effect on an enemy. Each stack increases the enemy's chance to be critically hit by 1% and reduces their perception and willpower by -2. Whenever a target under the effect suffers damage from an attack, it suffers +1 attack of Death Sentence. This effect lasts until the start of the Arbitrator's next turn. And yes, it has retransmissions. This can be used with Servo Skull Swarm. The next is Castigated. Enemies hit by the Arbitrator or their familiar deal 10 plus Arbitrator's coercion less damage for 1 round. So this can actually be made into a very tricky officer, and so it also works quite well with Operative. I do have a few builds to this that I haven't shown it yet. The abilities that also come with this is the Arbitrator chooses a cell within 6 cells radius. All allies within 3 cell radius around the Arbitrator must make a willpower all enemies must make a willpower resistance test with a Arbitrator's coercion penalty on a failed test. If possible, they immediately move to the designated cell. And the next one is In the Name of the Lex Imperialis. 1 round, the Arbitrator and their allies gain immunity to prone, stunned, immobilized, and cannot attack effects. As well as all types of forced movement, enemies must pass the willpower coercion test with the Arbitrator's coercion penalty or become immobilized until the Arbitrator's next turn. So this one has a lot of battlefield commanding presence. Lastly, Subductors. This one's going to be based on shields. You get Ruthless Suppression. If there are 2 or more enemies in a 2-cell radius around the Arbitrator, no critical hits can be scored against the Arbitrator or their familiar. And the Arbitrator and their familiar's critical hit chances increase by 10 plus the Arbitrator's coercion percentage. Whenever an enemy adjacent to the Arbitrator gets up from being prone, that enemy provokes an attack of opportunity from the Arbitrator. You also get Assault Onslaught. This is a shield ability. The Arbitrator dashes through allies and enemies in a straight line for 5 cells without provoking attacks of opportunity. Each enemy they dash through must pass an agility resistance test or fall prone until the start of the enemy's next turn. This ability, as I said, can only be used with a shield. Yeah, very, 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 very good. But if we actually look at some more of the abilities that come in here, we get a lot. And as you can see, there is a lot more present than other origins. So there's a lot more love going on here. Shotgun Mastery, you can one-hand, two-handed shotguns. Lawful Intervention, the Arbitrator can parry incoming attacks with ranged weapons. To calculate parry chance, the Arbitrator's Ballistic skill is used instead of weapon skill. The Arbitrator can make attacks of opportunity with a ranged weapon that they can use in melee. So yeah, if you can shoot melee, you can use attacks of opportunity. Armor Piercing can give the Arbitrator's successful attacks reduce enemies' armor by their 10 plus 2 times the Arbitrator's perception bonus. Law and Order, the Arbitrator's attacks made on other turns deal 10 plus the Arbitrator's willpower bonus percentage more damage. The target of such attacks must pass a willpower resistance test or become immobilized. Physical Training, the Arbitrator's toughness gains toughness equal to half their equipped shield block. Pacification Procedures, once per turn, the Arbitrator can throw a grenade that does not deal damage on impact. That action costs 0 AP and does not count towards their attack limit. Public Sentencing, whenever an enemy adjacent to the Arbitrator fails a willpower resistant test for the first time in a round, that enemy provokes an attack for opportunity from the Arbitrator. If multiple enemies fail this test at the same time, the attacks of opportunity is triggered against one of them randomly. Mob Justice, all allies in a 3-cell radius around the Arbitrator deal 5 plus the Arbitrator's coercion percent more damage, does not stack, and it does apply to yourself. Prepared Prosecution, during the tactical phase, the Arbitrator can be placed in a cell adjacent to an enemy. There were many bugs created by that. As long as the arbitrator has more than 90% wounds, they are immune to the following negative effects: blinded, disturbed, fatigued, perplexed, slowed, and staggered. Then we have the Pillar of the Law. After the arbitrator uses a heroic act or a desperate measure, they gain 10 plus 2 times willpower bonus to coercion and willpower bonus % block until the end of turn. Another really strong one. And lastly, the Steady Hand of Justice. With one-handed shock baton or one-handed power maul equipped, the arbitrator gains 10% to parry and reduces the weapon skill of enemies hit with this weapon by 10 until the end of combat. This does not stack, and this weapon also deals 25% more critical damage. Yeah, unbelievably so, this is S tier, and as you can see, it's a lot stronger than the other ones, and they said that they're going to be reviewing the others based on how strong the DLC pay to win is, so we'll be hoping we'll see that. But that's going to be sort of where we currently are with the Origins and Homeworlds. What do you guys think that the devs should be looking at to buff or change, and how would you like to see some changes made? If there are any mods that you've been using that you would like to recommend, do let people know in the comments. I'll be around soon, Revan out, and yeah, this is where I rate everything so far.